All right. This one feels like it's a long time coming. Episode 230 feels like we've been in the 220s for like a year. But welcome to episode 230. Craig is out today. Not sure what he's doing actually. He just said he wasn't available all day. Busy man. And Robin has a sick kid, so he may or may not be rocking up at some point. But we do have the return of Adam to the show after about 2 weeks absence.
I think it might be longer. I've Lazarus myself to the show, and I feel crap as well. So arguably could have stretched it out to an extended Vicente style indefinite injury. Just on the massage table for 6 months. But no, it's good to be back.
Good. Yeah. Well, it's a shame it's not in better circumstances, given what we're going to have to cover today. But you know, we have to do it. We signed up for this.
It could have been worse.
It really, really could have. I think that's probably the best way of looking at it. If you don't include the injuries, in which case it couldn't have been.
And the first half.
And the first half, yeah. So let's get straight down into it. The injury crisis is ever growing here at Brighton and Hove Albion. We're currently sitting with, prior to yesterday, we had Julio and Ciso out. Jakob Moda obviously out, who has been now training with the boys in full, which is great news as a player that looked like he showed a great deal of promise for both us and the Polish national team. It looks like there may be a chance in our future of actually seeing Jakob Moda play football for Brighton again, which I don't know about you, but like I've just come to decide it wasn't ever happening.
Yeah, well, it's also, we don't know what he's going to be like because sometimes people come back from these injuries and they're never the same. I think he's young enough where you hope that he can come back and really like grow into what he was doing before. But I know he does get forward quite well. It's been a long time since we've seen him play, but
yeah,
one of the things that we've missed, and De Zerbi talked about this, didn't he? Is that we've only really got one player that can stand in for the Moises Caicedo departure, and that's Baliba, who's 19 years old and has played all of 2 games. And he looks stunning, apart from maybe for about 10 seconds yesterday. But Moda can play, but he can be a bit more of that destructor role, where if you've got a lot of central midfield creators like Billy Gilmore and Dahoud and Lallana and so on and so forth. So it'd be great to have him back. It'd feel like a cliched new signing, wouldn't it?
It really would, yeah. If he can hit where he was before, and then what De Zerbi can do with players, like it, yeah, the sky's the limit for him, right? Like you look at McAllister and all that he brings to the team, and you think like there was a lot of the same traits that Moda showed, like especially when he was allowed to roam for Poland. Like you just think like De Zerbi's going to eat that up if he's half the player he was when he comes back. Estepinian obviously out as well with a thigh injury. Last thing we heard from him was October 4th, and it was De Zerbi's quote was he's injured and can't play for a long time, 1 month more or less. I don't know the right time, but it's a muscular injury and it is not just for a game or two. So as of right now, Fantasy Prem and stuff like that, I've got him earmarked as the 4th of November, right? Because it's like bang on a month, but it suspects it's probably going to be a little bit longer than that. And then Tarek Lamptey as well is also out for now. He's the same way. The last quote we got from him was October 7th, and it was, "We have to see tomorrow about Lamptey. I don't want to take any risks." So there's a lot of injuries on the table, and we have 2 more to talk about today as well. Danny Welbeck came off after just about 16 minutes, and we will get into the rest of the game, but this is just so shit right now. We may as well just hit it first. Danny Welbeck went off after 16 minutes with a hamstring injury, quite clearly a hamstring as well. But he was able to walk off of his own volition, and he was back out there at the end of the game, dressed warmly in the Manchester wind. And of course, the last minute injury to Solly March. I don't know what he's done. This is the worst thing today. We can lose Solly for a long time, was the wording from De Zerbi. I think we've had a couple of the well followed, well respected Twitter and TikTok injury guys look at it, and the general consensus is ACL, MCL, and everything in between, which is 9 to 12 months recovery time. this is a player that was first name off the lips of Roberto De Zerbi, much to everybody's surprise. And he has been a revelation under him. How much is this going to hurt when you look at Estepinian, Lamptey, and Ciso, the already lengthy injury list, to add Solly March to it as a really long-term one as well?
It's not great. I think if you didn't have all of the fullback issues, you could at least think to yourself, you know what, we've got cover in his position on the flank. Because you could even say, like, even if Enciso's out, well, that's all right. Like, we can play Ferguson up front. We've got Matoma on the left, and we'll bring in a João Pedro. We'll bring in a Simon Adingra. And then we could do some rotation. Danny Welbeck comes in. Like, we're okay. Ansu Fati, not even mentioned there. Buonanotte. So you've got cover in his standard position. Now, if he's playing at left back, which he is at the moment, and Estupinian is out for a little bit longer, or if he, at any point, Estupinian needs a rest, which he will. He's not a cyborg. Who are you playing at left back? No, it's a genuine question, because we know we can't rely on Tariq Lamptey long-term fitness-wise. All he's shown in his time here, apart from flashes of speed in that regard, which is amazing. On the downside, he's shown that he gets injured very often. So you can never plan for him to be around 100%. So that means you always need to have cover on the right-hand side as a backup. So you're thinking Veltman has to go out there. Who is your left back? Are you playing Pascal Gross? Igor?
Can I interest you in one James Milner?
No, you can't. You can't interest me. A side note: has there been a worse? Who does he compare with in terms of like the worst few outings of a new signing? Based on your expectations, are we in the realm of Jahanbash and DJ Locadia? Like, in terms of, like, you see him come out and you're just like, these guys aren't up to it? In that right back position?
In the position he's currently being played, yes, probably. The only saving grace he has is that obviously his impact off the pitch has been talked about quite extensively by Dunk and De Zerbi and a fair few others in the squad as to how much of a presence he is.
I agree. Let's keep him off the pitch. He sounds great off the pitch.
Right. But like, at least with him, like, he's actually contributing something, right? Like, he's actually giving something to the greater team. Whereas Locadia and Jahanbakhsh doesn't sound like they were really providing anything whatsoever.
Well, Locadia brought a bunch of beats, didn't he? That's the thing. So you can't deny that. Christmas party, he was effective. Yeah,
I suspect it was probably the opposite. Actually, he probably made people not want to show up to the Christmas party.
Well, there's a big issue here. There is a big issue here, and we talked about this with Milner, right? You have to. I'm not going away from the Solly March thing. We'll come back to it, but Milner, if you're going to play Milner, you have to play him in that defensive midfield role in one of those pivot positions. He has great stamina. He's got great maturity. He knows what he's doing in a football pitch. What he doesn't have anymore is pace. And I think if we go back to looking at how devastatingly poor the first half was, you have to expect that De Zerbi thought Milner was going to face up against Jack Grealish. And I don't think he expected Jeremy Doku to play, who Grealish, yes, he's got pace, but he's not electric. He's more about can he trick you with the ball? And Milner can deal with that, probably. Jeremy Doku's just going to dance past him, as we saw 400 times. And we saw, right, second half time, okay, Milner, you're out of here. Like, we cannot take this anymore. So I think you're going to find that happen, though, right? You're going to face up against teams, and they are going to target you now where you're weak in those positions. Where are we weak now? Well, currently on both right and left back, which is tricky. Devastating for Solly, though, because he's been in the form of his career, hasn't he, really?
Yeah, he has. And I mean, when you look at him now, like, he's what, 27, 28? So, like, this is 29 years old. So if this is a 12-monther, like, he's losing probably like the best 12 months of his career, technically, on, 29, 30 years old. Like, it's unbelievably bad. I think, to answer your question as to who you're going to see at left back, I think, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves to the Ajax stuff now, but like, I think we're probably going to see Igor there at least once or twice to see what that looks like.
Is
because
he? Does he have any pace?
we don't have any other options, do we? Like genuinely, like you said, like what Lamptey's out, Estepinion's out, Veltman is right back, Dunk is centre back, Van Hecker, Webster, and Igor. That is it. We don't like unless you play Milner there. Like that's it.
Well, or this is a dumb idea. You play Matoma there, because he has defensive qualities. He's shown it for Japan, where he can be a little bit further back, but that's been more of a part of a back five, and he's played as a wing back. Maybe De Zerbi's got to tweak things a little bit and play like that. He did do that at the start of his time, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's played three at the back before. We talked about this at Sassuolo.
Yeah,
he has had long stints of playing three at the back, and I wonder if that's because of an injury there that we never like looked into, right? Like, I wonder if he was forced into it. So he has played three at the back sometimes, but I just wonder how difficult that transition would be with the passing patterns that he obviously instills in these players. Like, how tough does a changing system like that look? And how long do you have to do that with, right? Like, we could have done with these two injuries happening 2 weeks ago if they were going to. Not that there's particularly a good time for it. But obviously with Solly out, we've got a rough time ahead of us. It's going to be very difficult.
But yeah, but when we talk, how often did we harp on about this, about the depth we had at wing back, and you especially? You've been saying this whole time towards when the window closed, we just don't have the depth there, and you were getting lambasted on Twitter by people talking about, oh, how dare you speak ill of the people.
I still was yesterday after the injury.
Yeah,
I still was.
Well, you are allowed to comment like that. Like, of the amazing job that's been done, you are allowed to maybe like see some flaws or potential issues and things. We don't just have to be like these are gods. And that is, and I can tell you based on full professional experience of starting a Football Manager 2024 beta save in the last 48 hours. But you look at the squad, right, and you look at it and you're like, well, there's a glaring omission here. There's no depth. That you have to play players out of position. And I go back to the summer transfer window, and we did amazing work, but you've kind of like, surely you have to assume part of like injuries and rotation, which De Zerbi did. Like, what happened in the breakdown there? Could they just not find a fullback that could cover? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And I don't know what the answer is going to be long term, because Estepinion is going to be out at least another couple of weeks. Lamptey's out. March is done.
These are your must-win games here. This is a must-win set of fixtures. I know we always say this, but you have to win these Europa League games coming up. You have to, or you're out.
Yeah, and then it's not just that either, but like the fixtures for the next like month are very kind to us after
all winnable.
A very tough time. Yeah, you got Ajax, Fulham, Everton, Ajax, Sheffield United, Forest, Athens. Like, that is very nice. Like,
and then Chelsea away.
A lot of those games, and then Chelsea away. Yeah. And even then, really, then you got Brentford, Burnley, Marseille.
Both at home. Brentford, Burnley at home.
And Marseille at home.
Yeah, you want points from all those games, don't you?
Yep. This is a very kind period of time for us. And we don't have any players. So that's great. The starting lineup yesterday, obviously, March at left back, Igor and Dunk at the back, centre backs, and Milner at right back. We've talked a little bit about that. Jason Steele in goal, Baleba and Gross in the midfield, Welbeck, Mitoma, Adingra, and Pedro up top. Obviously, with Solly March covering at left back, we're not going to be having, Adingra is the one that's going to be playing on the right. I suspect that we may well, with Welbeck being out, may well see a fair bit more of Ansu Fati and Adingra compared to what they thought they were going to be doing 3 or 4 months ago, I suspect. But when you saw that lineup, I suspect you probably felt the same as everybody else in that, oh no, it's going to be a tough day with Doku versus Milner. But the general lambasting I got on Twitter was the idea that we have a perfectly good right back. We're just choosing not to play him, and that's De Zerbi's fault. And that, of course, is Joel Veltman, who was signed as a centre back and has played centre back his whole career until we converted him into a right back. So this is not someone who's a natural right back, but he is admittedly excellent there. We all know how much I love Joel Veltman anyway, so I'm going to be biased towards him regardless. But he is excellent there. He changed the game at halftime, like absolutely changed it, moving him in. But do you think that was a tactical decision in terms of making sure the Dutch boys are as fit and ready as they can be for the game against Ajax? Or do you think that was a tactical mistake by De Zerbi, who genuinely believed Milner was the better option at right back?
I have no idea, but he's shown that he wants to play Milner in the part. He's shown that, like, even in his other instances and other games in recent memory. I feel like we keep having these conversations where it's like, oh my god, he's doing it again. Like, are you watching the same games as us? Like, Milner keeps like playing horribly in this right back position. Why do you keep doing it? I think it might be a combination, probably, of the things that you said. I think he knows that you've got to go and get something up with against Ajax. He probably looks at this Man City game. Man City away. There is no tougher game in your season. Do we just put out what we can put out and see what happens? Maybe there's a bit of that. Because what you don't want to do is be running out Milner at right back again in a game that is a must-win game to keep you in European competition for the most part. So yeah, possibly. Again, I go back to the thing. I think he thought Grealish would play, which is why I don't think he probably thought Doku would play. But he did tweet, like, there was a lot of weird tactical changes and things that happened in the game compared to how we sort of usually play, and how the focus of both teams was. It was all very heavily, like, everyone targeted this left flank. So I don't know whether it was a bit of a Pep De Zerbi, like, who can outthink the other one. Like, it had an air of that to it a little bit.
Yeah, and that first 20 minutes, there was definitely one clear winner, and that was
just 20 minutes. It felt longer than that.
Well, yeah, the entire first half, really, but at least we didn't keep conceding goals every 7 minutes. So that first 7 minutes, if you go onto some of the websites that are knocking about with the heat map, SofaScore, who scored, if you go to the first 7 minutes, it's literally just red, and it's just the left hand side. So for the entirety of that first 7 minutes, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they ripped us apart on that side. And within 7 minutes, Doku skinned Milner for, I think, the third time in 7 minutes. Passed the ball into the middle, and there was Julian Alvarez with what was admittedly a bit of a shit finish, but
scuffed it. Little FIFA rat goal that was.
It was, and it was enough to put them 1-0 up. Could Steele have done better with that? I suspect you're watching the replays soon, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because my opinion is I think he could have.
Maybe, but I don't know. Like, it's so hard to say that, and we get into the should Verbruggen be playing or whatever. But
yes,
I don't like to do. And look, all I'm going to say is at least it's not Robert Sanchez. So do yourself a favour, if you haven't seen, go watch Sanchez against Arsenal. I'll take Steele maybe not saving a scuffed Julian Alvarez shot over that
every day, every single day.
I'm trying to bring up a replay while you're talking just to see what I thought about it, but I don't know. When I was watching it, I wasn't thinking, "Oh my God, Steele, you're useless." I was just thinking we just got carved apart.
Yeah,
so the ball went out.
That either, but
if I remember rightly, I sent you that screenshot, right, where it was. I'm pretty sure Doku just dribbled it off the pitch and no one saw.
Oh no, I didn't even see that.
Let me see here if that actually happened. I'm watching it live. This is boring for people listening. It's just someone talking about watching a replay. But yeah, we've got like cover of about 3 people, and I'm pretty sure I saw a replay of the ball actually going across the byline before he cuts it back. But it was a bit lazy marking. We didn't get the proper coverage, and then Alvarez was just left alone while 2 people were ball watching. I mean, I'm not blaming Steele there. I probably blame 3 people beyond him.
It was poor overall anyway. halfway through between the two goals, we have the Welbeck injury to knock some rhythm out of us immediately, as if we had any to begin with. And 10 minutes later, 12 minutes later, that man, as per usual, Erling Haaland, scores yet another tap-in that everyone says all he does is score tap-ins with an absolute rope from outside the box. Not much Steele can do with that one, really. It was just an absolute rocket into the bottom corner. But it all came from the error from Carlos Baleba, unfortunately. As you said, second career start, I think, for the Albion. These are going to be the growing pains we are going to have to witness, isn't it? 3 years younger than Caicedo, 2 career starts, and the second one is at the Etihad. These things are unfortunately the things we are going to have to watch as De Zerbi and the gang nurture players like him, isn't it?
Yeah, he's 19 years old. He's born in 2004. Like, he never witnessed the discussion of the Millennium Dome opening. It wasn't even a twinkle in his father's eye for two-ish years after that. Like, there's you expect these kind of mistakes from a player that young against the toughest opposition in the world. You just do. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. But we've seen enough flashes from him where we can see that there's an incredible player there. Is he going to be playing faultless football for 90 minutes every single game? No, you'd be crazy to expect that. But again, you've got to remember, Yves Bissouma, the amount of mistakes that guy made at the start of his career. I think you talked about this a few episodes ago as well. Now look at the guys playing out of his skin for Spurs. Caicedo was playing for a relegation Belgian side. Like, it took a while for him to kind of figure out. Like, it takes some time. So I'm not worried about that. It's just an unfortunate situation. This is the difference, though, when you face a Man City, obviously, compared to if you make that kind of mistake against a Nottingham Forest. Haaland's going to smash the ball in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's strange to think that at just 5 months old, Baleba was sitting in Cameroon watching Leon Knight score the winner in the playoff final.
He probably was. Yeah, he got the aerial out. Yeah, he's watching it. Did we have aerials then? I can't remember. I've lost track of what happened in those years. Did we have
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure.
Was still terrestrial TV? I can't remember.
No, I think we definitely no, because it was on Sky, wouldn't it? So we had to have cable.
Well, I don't know what the facilities are like in Baleba's hometown in Cameroon. No.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Probably had aerials at that point. We weren't streaming it, that's for sure.
Yes, get download. Just get a stream. Get download on LimeWire on it. Yeah,
just buff streams. We don't endorse any of those, by the way. We don't.
4-year-old Baleba on
4-month-old Baleba.
4-month-old. Christ, yeah.
So 19 minutes in, 2-0 down. Everybody was assuming the worst, I think, at this point. The worry was there after watching us just get pumped by Villa 6-1. That we may well be on the end of another rout here. And yet for the rest of the half, it just kind of went into this pattern of, quite frankly, really shit football.
Yeah, it was rubbish.
73% possession for City. They had one shot to talk about from that, not on target. And overall did absolutely nothing with it. It was really poor. And it felt like, as you said earlier, it felt like this was just like a strange chess match at that point. As to where are you going to go? What am I going to do here? It felt very just, it resulted in poor football. And I think you put it out there too in the chat on the day. Watching City, especially when they're in the lead, is just such a boring experience. And it became just that from 20 minutes until 45, didn't it?
Yeah, you go 2-0 up at home, and you're Man City. I think you can just you just stick it back into second gear, third gear, and just coast. And then we were shell shocked. I've not seen
shy, I think, is the word that's ever used.
Yeah. At least probably for the first, I would say not just the first 20 minutes, but the first 30 minutes. There's very few teams in the world where you can just be utterly dominated and all you can think of is how bad does this get? Like, we can't even string 2 passes together or get the ball out of our own final third. Like, that they were doing that, and it was just a case of, can we like limit this to not embarrassing football or an embarrassing scoreline? Because it did feel like that. We just couldn't. We had to abandon the game plan. Like, as in, it was. I don't know if you noticed this as well, but we have all this data and statistics that came out about how much we're all about short passing. You play out the back, the De Zerbi style. That was gone. Steele was just punting the ball to Matoma and hoping that he found Walker out of position and Matoma could beat his man one time. And by the way, that did work a couple of times, but he had to switch it up and we had to play a bit more direct because we could not play out the back because Man City's like press is done in such a way where all the passing lanes are completely blocked. There's no way to actually put the ball out to a player. We were just overwhelmed the whole time. When they got their 2 goals, they let that go a little bit, but I think we were just so damaged by the first 20 minutes. They all just like, let's get to the dressing room, let's get to the changing room and just figure this out.
Yeah, it really was. It was like in a boxing analogy. It's like we'd been on the floor and got up, and we were just desperately trying to see out the rest of the round. Like, just please God, like shell up, take the licks, and try and stay in it.
Yeah, just hug as long as possible.
Yeah, just clinch the shit out of it. And clinch we did because we went in after what was a torrid 19 minutes, only 2-0 down at half time. Which is really an excellent result on the face of things after the first 20 minutes. The obvious tactical maneuver happened. Joel Veltman comes in for James Milner. And, well, we're going to talk a little bit about Fatty and Gilmore coming on. The general response was praise for the tactical subs of bringing those 2 on and changing the game. But I alluded to it earlier. I think Veltman was the biggest change we had. Like, it changed the game entirely. They were no longer able to just run down the left-hand side again, like FIFA style, just like run down the wing with R2 held until you get to the byline and then cut back. Like, there was no more of that because Veltman was like committing GBH like on the halfway line before Doku even got a hold of the ball. And like, frankly, like, that's what's needed, isn't it, when you've got a player that good and that quick? We saw it happen with Zaha, who basically left the Premier League after that happened to him. We've never heard from him again. He's just gone into obscurity. And now, like, Veltman's still there. But the second half was a lot better. We actually had a little bit of edge on the possession. And I thought the main thing for that was forcing them to diversify their play because they were no longer able to just rinse us down that left-hand side. And Veltman is the reason for that.
Yeah, they had to change their tactics a little bit as well. So that they had to move. They were very, very, very aggressive in that first half, as we saw. And I'm pretty sure they were playing their like standard invert the full backs, basically play with a back 3 and then not actually even wing backs, just like a 3, then 2 midfielders, and then just everyone else attacks. And it felt like that. We just couldn't get out. And then the second half, it changed a little bit and they played a little bit more of a conventional back 4 and had less of a sort of brutality on the attack. But yeah, Veltman was massive in terms of turning the tide a little bit there. De Zerbi seems to have this talent of, I don't know, and we never saw this, I feel like, it with certainly the previous manager whose name we don't speak about. He has this really, really actual ability that we think as fans is like just a given with managers to actually change things at halftime. Because I think it's one of those sort of fallacies that's well regarded where you think, oh, the manager just comes in at halftime and gives a hairdryer treatment and changes it. For the most part, from what we actually understand nowadays, that doesn't really happen. They go in, they talk a little bit about tactics, and it's just like, okay, go out and like just mark him a bit better and you push forward. It's not like this massive like lesson that occurs. De Zerbi seems to actually be able to motivate them and help to push them on in such a massive way that we come out looking like different teams in the second half. Like, that's a pattern. I think what's weird for me though is that why do we keep starting out weirdly? Like, the first half in a lot of our games seems to be this weird mental battle where it's like, can we settle into a game before we have some kind of mental breakdown whereby we like have 2-3 conceded goals and we've just already capitulated before De Zerbi can then work his magic at half time. That's the confusing thing for me. And I think in this one, obviously, keeping it to 2 goals was massive because you did end up having a game in your hands. This was a game of football. And in the first 20 minutes, you would have said, I'm going to turn this off maybe about 50, 55 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I reckon there was probably some people that turned it off at 20. It wouldn't shock me, would it? You like seeing what happened there and knowing what happened at Villa a couple of weeks ago? I bet there was a handful of people that sacked it off.
Yeah, you get PTSD from the Villa result, and frankly, still the West Ham one haunts me.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty tight game after that, though. Pretty like just nothing really going on, but there was a little bit more openness to the game, which is always nice. And there were a few times in that second half, especially where Mitoma had Walker at 6s and 7s. And it's not often you see Kyle Walker get skinned. I think the commentator even noted it too. They were like, I can't believe I've seen Kyle Walker get beaten twice today. And I think that was about 4 minutes before he beat him again to result in getting the goal back. And a big goal it was as well. Ansu Fati again on the score sheet. One that we need to keep playing more often. I think now with the Solly March injury, he's probably going to be getting a lot more game time. But the goal was basically all Karim Mitoma for a large part of that build-up. And he's just signed a new deal, of course, until 2027. Just how good is this kid? Like, I say kid, he's actually about 26 now, I think, isn't he? But like, just how good is Mitoma? Like, I thought he was excellent again yesterday. I don't think he was awarded the assist on a technicality because it did kind of ricochet around, but it was him that basically created the whole moment. How are you feeling about that new deal till 2027? I think he's basically doubled his wages, and a bit of security, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just glad now that we won't have Chelsea fans accusing us of like keeping Mitoma enslaved or something on like a pathetic wages, and we're like mistreating him. So that's good. No, I mean, he's our phenom. Like he is the guy now. And to keep him, to get a contract in that means that even when he does have to leave, because we get one of those offers we can't refuse, it means you are going to get what he's actually worth, as opposed to someone in trying to lowball us because he's not contracted for a long time and his wages are terrible and his agent throws his toys out the pram. But I think he's great. I think he's great I think he's just a really great fit for the team and what we do as a club. He feels like a model professional. He's got an amazing attitude. And I don't know. I don't think I've seen anyone that has the skill with the ball at his feet like he does in a Brighton shirt for as long as I can remember, quite frankly. Just in terms of some actual stats from yesterday, he was as good as what the eye test showed. He had 7 take-ons and 4 of them were successful. Now compare that to who we said Jeremy Doku basically skinned James Milner alive. Well, he also had 7 take-ons and had 5 successes. So there's only 1 more than Mitoma had against Kyle Walker, who is broadly regarded as probably, even though he's getting on a little bit and he still has the pace, one of the best right backs probably in football still. Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't say enough, and this is a guy that was getting the ball punted out to him from Jason Steele and just hoping. And he always seems to manage to create something. There was a part in the game as well, if you remember, he went around 3 or 4 people, and if it wasn't for a slightly crappy shot, he would have scored like a Messi style wonder goal. But
it was Messi-esque. I know exactly what moment you're thinking of. It made me think of Messi really well. Yeah. I think it's an excellent deal. Whether this is a precursor to him going in the summer for like 125 million quid, like most of these deals are.
I really hope he stays a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's tough to know, isn't it? But I think that, and this is again going to sound very stereotype, but like it feels like he's probably more likely to have an agent that is not going to throw his toys out the pram. I believe that it's a Japanese agency too, and the way the Japanese do business is very different to the way South American agents do business, from like the attitude towards the media all the way down to the absolute wild shit you have with partial ownership all the way back to Tevez and Mascherano, right? Like, I'm not trying to be too stereotypical with like the way the Japanese and the South American are, but like it's a very different ball game and very complicated, especially when it comes to contracts and the way they handle their clients. It feels like he's less likely to have like toys thrown out the pram, I think, for sure. If he's going to
100%.
leave, I think it will happen appropriately. Similar to the way Alexis did, really, except for his dad mouthing off to every single TV channel for 4 months beforehand. Alexis himself was a model professional, wasn't he? Like,
but you could tell. You could just tell by the person, the character of the individual.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Ansu Fati scored the goal. Ansu Fati is basically going to be seeing dollar signs in his eyes here, because the kid came over here looking for more stable football. He's playing in what is supposed to be the best league in the world, certainly one of the most fast-paced, especially compared to La Liga. He is about to get all the game time, don't you think, with Welbeck and Solly March now hurt? You would hope, right? You've now got João Pedro, Adingra, Mitoma, him, and Ferguson is really like, that's it. That's the only options you've got really up top now.
Yeah, you could Buonanotte maybe. You could argue there as well. But
I keep forgetting about him. Yeah.
Yeah, so does Zerbi.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, I don't think you sign Ansu Fati without a very stern warning or understanding from Barcelona, with them saying, you better be playing this kid a lot, because if not, we're wasting our time here, because he could sit on the bench for us. He'll be playing a lot. But he's also, it's not just for injury's sake. Like Mitoma pulled out the Japan squad for what? Tiredness?
Yeah. He didn't pass physical. He didn't the wording was odd, but like basically it was like, he's came here shattered. We're just going to send him home.
Yeah, he looked leggy at the end of the season as well last season, right? And we've got more games this season, so it's not like you can just turn Mitoma out every single game when you've got the Thursday, Sundays. So he's going to have to cover on in a lot of ways. So now we'll see a lot more of Ansu Fati. I think prior to him getting the goal today, I'd completely forgotten that he'd even scored against Villa, because I think I just blocked the game out of my mind. But if he has been, let's be honest, he's been disappointing. You bring in Ansu Fati and you think, oh my God, we've got this kid coming. The potential there is incredible. And let's face it, he's been pretty crap. And
very
now
slow start.
Yes, and it's okay to say that. I'm not against Ansu Fati. Like I hope he becomes one of the best players in the world, and we can be like, remember that time he played for Brighton? We made him. Getting that second goal is very, very important. Let's see if he gets a longer run in the team, that he can get into a bit more of a zone with some of these players, especially if it's now a smaller group and we don't have constant rotation. And there's a core group of that front four. He can just get into a bit more of a vibe and a groove with everyone, and really start to put the goals away.
Yeah, agreed. I think I'm just excited to see him get more game time, because I think that's the sort of way you're going to see him get better and better. And I wouldn't have sacrificed March for him, but it sounds like we've not got a choice. So
no, and this is the run of games though, right? This is the run of games you want to see him like start to, beat up the weak kids, like that you don't want him, because we've seen with Evan Ferguson yesterday, for example, it doesn't get looking. Like, how many times did Evan Ferguson touch the ball against City? Like, really,
very
wasn't
quiet.
It wasn't much, and that's not really his fault. Like, we just didn't create enough proper. It's hard against that Man City group, but we should see a completely different setup against some of these other teams that we're about to play, and this is where you want to build the confidence in these younger players.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we had plenty of moments to equalize as well. Pascal Gross had a good opportunity. Mitoma broke through, and I thought he was going to lob him just like he did against Brentford, but he elected to try and put it through his legs, and Ortega made a pretty good save.
Yeah.
And I think there was one or two other opportunities there or thereabouts that were decent ones. We had our opportunities to equalize. We also had our opportunities to let in a couple more as well when the game opened up in the manner it did. So we can't really rue our losses too much, because we were lucky. This could have ended 2-2, or it could have ended 4-1, and both results would have looked not too wild, depending on the way the game had opened up. 2-1 though, at the end of the day, I think anyone going to the Etihad, it sounds very defeatist, but you would take 2-1, wouldn't you? Before the game even started, you'd have took 2-1.
Yes. After the first 20 minutes, I would have taken 4-1. the idea that we've
3-0
somehow
forfeit.
got a goal. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's look, Man City hit a bit of a tricky run of form recently, but they had the international break was very kind of a great time for them. So it's this probably a horrible time for us to unfortunately have to play them when they've been able to sort of re-engage themselves. But this was a Man City team that, apart from De Bruyne, were at full strength. This was their they could any one of their riches they could play. And look, it's not fair sometimes when you look at it. I'm sorry, but if you can get 2-1 away from home against the team sheet that they put out, while you are, with all due respect, playing James Milner at right back and Solly March at left back, that's a good account of yourselves, because I would say that's on paper the worst fullback pairing in the Premier League.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you got to remember as well, Rodri was back for a lot of those people going, but they
just the best
lost their
defensive
last
midfielder
three.
in the world.
Yeah, the common pattern is they had no Rodri for the 3 games they've just lost, and Rodri's back. And it showed, right? Because they were defensively so much better. It was a tough day. Even worse for my fantasy team because he played fucking Ortega in goal. What is that decision? Absolutely fuming. But let's do the read for Green King Sport before we get on to Ajax and some player of the match options. So for the 23-24 season, as you all know by now, Together BAJ is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. It is a massive fortnight of sport with the Premier League, obviously us in the Europa League, massive games coming up as well. The rugby and cricket all taking center stage. To celebrate, Green King is giving listeners of this podcast 20% off drinks until the 29th of October, an hour before, during, and after the sport. All you need to do is download the Green King Sport app. If you've not downloaded it before, and this will be your first time doing it, you'll also get a free welcome pint to use at any point in time. So get down there, get hammered, and watch us beat Ajax. Hopefully.
Drink responsibly, please.
Yeah, please do drink responsibly. Don't do anything stupid. So head to the App Store, download the Green King Sport app, get 20% off your round, and then obviously don't miss a minute of the action instead of like I did yesterday where I was just thrown all over the place. But yeah, player of the match yesterday. Who you got?
Probably Milner for me. No, it's Matoma. It's not anyone else, is it really? I mean, yeah, it's Matoma.
Yeah, same. I did want to give a shout out to Lewis Dunk though, because I thought he was excellent yesterday. Really didn't do
England man of the match in one of the games, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, in the game he was allowed to play because obviously he had to cede his position to the superior Harry Maguire for the big qualifier against.
God, I hate Southgate. I can't stand the man.
Yeah. Well, you brought him up, so that's your fault that time.
No, that is sorry. Yeah, we'll move on.
Ajax next. Very, very bad Ajax. They are now sitting 17th in the league. Their last 6. This is Ajax, by the way, guys. Like, you remember that team? Like one of the best teams in the world for large stretches of time, and comfortably one of the best teams in the Netherlands since I can remember being alive. They are in 17th place. Only FC Volendam, who are literally not a real team.
That is a regen team, isn't it?
That is it is a regen team, yeah. And they are they've played 7, won 1, drawn 2, lost 4. Their last 6 is draw, loss. They are not very good. They've just been absolutely battered in previous games by Twente, who scored 3, Feyenoord, who beat them 4-0 before the game, before they started just destroying their own stadium. Alkmaar also beat them 2-1, and they've just lost a pretty good thriller of a game against 16th place, proper relegation 6-pointer, FC Utrecht 4-3. This is a team in absolute freefall on and off the pitch. They are it's just a disaster. First of all, let's talk lineup. What are you expecting to show up on Thursday? I'll give my 2 for sure. There's no doubt in my mind that Verbruggen and Veltman are starting. just on the basis of
The
who
double
they
Dutch?
are and what Ajax will mean to them as people who grew up Dutch, right? Like I think that's all the motivation you need for those two players when you roll them out there Thursday of like you're playing Ajax, have fun. And the double whammy for Veltman especially. But yeah, what are you thinking we're actually going to roll out there on Thursday, or at least hoping some names on the team sheet you're hoping to see?
I want to see what we thinking of is Lamptey. We don't know.
We don't know yet. I think we have our presser Tuesdays for Europa.
This lineup, this back line is going to be an absolute cobbled together, jerry rigged thing. Let's assume the injuries are as they are. I think it is Igor at left back, right? I don't think you have another choice, and I think you're looking at. Oh, you've got the pooch in the background having his say. You probably got Van Hecker and Dunk centre back.
Of course, Van Hecker as well.
Dutch, you got him in. Get all the Dutch in.
Yeah.
I think, Christ, you probably. I mean, yeah, it has to be Veltman, right? Yeah, I don't see another solution there unless you decide you're going to try Veltman at left back and you play Gross at right back. I don't know. I hate the idea of that. I would like to see Billy Gilmore play. I really, really, really would. And I think you're playing Gilmore and probably Gross in the pivot. Haven't seen too much of Mahmoud Dahoud, but he's Mahmoud Dahoud rather. Not been that amazing though, has he? I know he did. What was he? Did he? I'm looking for yesterday. Was he? He didn't. There was nothing from him, was he? Did he? He didn't come
Dahoud was on the bench, but no, he didn't. He did not come on. No.
So maybe you're spelling him at some point. I think the interesting part is what we do up front, though, right? I think you have to play Mitoma, even if he is going to be tired at some point. Assuming Welbeck's out, you're playing Ferguson up front with probably Pedro in the hole behind, and then I think you're playing Fatty on the right.
See, I think it's going to be the other way around. I think you're right. I think all three will start, and that I'm excited to see. I think we're going to see Fatty in the hole behind Ferguson and Pedro on the right because he's done right wing before for Watford.
Yeah, I quite like João Pedro though, as a 10 with his back to goal.
Yeah.
He does well at that. And I'd rather have someone with a bit more pace on. I mean, Pedro's been really good on that, effective on that left-hand side when he's come on as a sub. But you're right. We could definitely see him on the right.
I wonder if we give a Dinger and Mitoma 45 each on the left. Just try and find that balancing act between the two. Just like, all right, you're both tired, so you're only going to get 45 minutes each because you both played the full 90. Like, just go out there and play each because that's the Dinger's natural position too. Remember, like the left-hand side is where he played all the time. I wonder if we start one there and make the sub at halftime and bring on the other as like a preordained maneuver.
Maybe. I mean, it's interesting. If you do that, you're relying on again to reset everyone's expectations. It's great that we're on cloud 9, but your front line at that point would be 19-year-old Evan Ferguson, 22-year-old João Pedro, the senior of the group, 21-year-old Simon Adingra, 20-year-old Ansu Fati. So 19, 20, 21, and 22. I
know. What options have we got though? Genuinely, what other options have we got? Other than
Gilmore's still 22. Belieber 19. Yeah, we're playing the youth now. But look, if you can't beat this Ajax team,
unless we go Fatty left, Pedro right, Ferguson up top, Lallana behind him.
I could see Lallana play.
I think he might play too.
That's not a bad shout. I could see you might want his maturity in there.
It's a sort of game for him too, because the pace will be slightly less as well.
Yeah.
That was one of my thoughts. Is this good to get one of those games that Lallana is a really nice fit for?
That's not a bad idea.
Honestly, looking at this Ajax side, I can see why they're not the team they used to be. With the exception of Bergwijn, like FIFA rat, as you say. Like outside of him, like Borna Sosa, like great, like Brian Broby, whatever his name is, like
They
fine.
got
Like,
Schuba Akpom.
I was going to say Akpom came on as a substitute, but I mean their back line was like babies this weekend, like children, like younger than ours. Some of them.
They've done that. They've done a bit of a Southampton to themselves, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they're really, their keeper is injured. Arguably their best player, Steven Berghaus, is injured. I don't know if you necessarily. I guess you'd say Bergwijn is the best player, but Berghaus is injured. He played for Netherlands at the World Cup. But they sold Kudus, Timber, Alvarez, Bassi, and some other guys in this last window. So they lost. That's a lot of people. They lost Dusan Tadic on a free. So they sold 130 million euro of player. And they didn't really replace him.
No, their back line today was a 20-year-old right back, a 23-year-old centre half, a 17-year-old centre half, and then Borna Sosa at 25 on the left-hand side, who got both of their assists and is one of their better players as well. Interestingly, they started their goalkeeper, 23 years old. He was subbed off Jay Gorter at 74 minutes for the substitute keeper. So they may well have an injured keeper on their hands as well. This is going to be a team that, and I'm not even going to give them the same respect as Athens in that respect, because this is like, that's who Athens were. Like they weren't playing with makeshift teams, and like, that's how Athens play. Like they play the way they did against us, and it was highly effective. Ajax are not getting the same level of like leniency, right? Like they're in absolute free fall. Like Athens are doing fine. Like this is not the same. Like we need to be getting a result here. And arguably, I'd even be saying that like we should be looking at getting 6 points. Like we should be doing the double on this thing, like back to back, because they don't have time to turn it around. It's not like we're playing Marseille in December. If we were playing Ajax in the middle of December, you never know what Ajax is going to rock up, right? Like likewise for Marseille now, they'll have had a couple of months with Gattuso. Like this Ajax team have got 2 weeks or so in between games. They're not going to suddenly become competent again. Like they're a disaster. Like we need to be getting points from these guys, don't we?
Yeah, and it's not like that you can even expect a new manager bounce. The new manager only came in July. So they've already done that, and I'm not sure that the bounce maybe was a bit deflated. It's interesting.
Well, they won their first game. Come on.
No, there you go. They got something. The mentality, I think, in football, like it does. I know it gets talked about a lot, but I also still think it's underplayed a little bit. Just how important that is, and I think you just have to look over it at West London and our favourite Blue London team. Like what happens when the mentality and the I guess the morale in the team and the club is poor. It's insidious, and that just drives the team down. And when it's good, things go well. When it's bad, it's hard to get out of that rut. We've seen that with Manchester United. I don't know if probably a bunch of people that listens watch that Beckham documentary on Netflix recently.
I watched the first episode. I enjoyed it. I'm going to watch the rest.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. When Beckham was like, he was your hero when growing up. Like I had his white boots, like his pictures up and all this. And I hated him, but he was England, apart from the Argentina thing. But he talked about, there was a whole part, you'll get to this, I'm not ruining it hopefully because it's happened, talking about the whole Real Madrid thing.
It's not really a spoiler,
it's this history, yeah. Talking about how that run of form they had where they were just in dire straits. This is with the Galacticos when you had OG, the real Ronaldo, Roberto Carlos, Zidane, Beckham, obviously, Figo at the peak of their powers in some ways, and they just couldn't get a win. But this was also all going on while the Beckham affair stuff was happening. He wasn't training with it. It was an absolute mess, all this kind of stuff. And they talked about how there had to just be this big morale and mentality change for them to get out, and eventually they go on and win the league. That's if you play a team, it doesn't matter how good they are on paper, and this Ajax team's not even good on paper, as you've just alluded to. Like, if you've got a better mentality than now, you're a better place, which this Brighton team should still be after not getting battered by Man City and giving a good account of themselves. You should be coming out and smashing this group in because you are better on paper and you are better mentally at the moment as well.
Agreed. Well said. Elsewhere in the league this week, was a lot of red cards this week. Bournemouth had a man sent off. City obviously had a man sent off. Burnley had a man sent off, and Everton had a man sent off. Notable results around the grounds. Forest drew 2-2 with Luton. Luton came back from 2-0 down there. Talking of mentality, I think they're going to be all right in terms of mentality for the whole season, don't you? I think they are treating this like a free-hit season. And they are. I thought they were going to be like a Derby County level of like embarrassing, but I think they're going to upset a handful of teams this season. They seem to be almost accepting their role as absolutely dead in the water underdogs, and it's hurting teams like Forest.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah, thought it was a very good result for them yesterday. Brentford, who have been struggling, absolutely destroyed Burnley. And then Robert Sanchez, after Chelsea went 2-0 up at home to Arsenal, committed, is it seppuku?
Seppuku, yeah. A lot of Japanese references in this one, yeah.
Yeah, there is. And decided to hand his buddies, Ben White and Trossard, the draw. And again, that's a mentality thing too, isn't it? We're talking about Arsenal's mentality this season so far, before the wheels come off in January. It has been superb, hasn't it? It's an interesting one. And Villa, West Ham play later, and we could actually see a bit of a gap emerge in the top six to everybody else.
Yeah, we could. I mean, I think that, by the way, I'm going to go back to the red card thing you talked about, because I'm so glad that the red card was given in our game, because so many times you get into these situations where a player's been yellow carded and they think, you know what, if I do a little like questionable foul that I know is a professional foul, but I'll probably get away with it because the ref's not going to give me a red card for this because I'm already on a yellow. And the ref's actually like, you know what? No, you deserve a second yellow for this, unfortunately. Like, that's good refereeing, because
we saw it at Liverpool, didn't we? I don't know if you watched the early game, but it was every day of the week it was a sending off.
Yep.
And he didn't give it.
So I'm really glad he did that. Obviously, it was unfortunate it didn't happen a little bit earlier. It might have made a difference for us. I think I'm not really, honestly, I've not really been looking at the table because of the international break and because of, frankly, what happened now against Villa since then. But we're still obviously still in a decent position. It's all a lot of this is going to hinge on how well we end up doing in this next run of games, right? And we've talked about this a lot, but November is such a massive month for us. Like, can you do what you should be able to do against these lesser sides? Like, there's no way you shouldn't be getting points against these other teams here. Can we start to solidify ourselves in this particular position in the table? Because if not, I think we do have a set of teams that are absolutely tripe in this league. But then you get into this mosh pit in the middle, and you do not want to get dragged into that, because as it stands at time of recording, you are still above the likes of Man United, West Ham, Chelsea. That can very easily change based on the expectations of those teams. And you don't want to see us start to drift into 10th and 11th, do you?
No, exactly. And then it becomes a bit boring, especially for out the Europa. Then we just become another fodder team, don't we? Especially before January.
You just hope that maybe this little bad run of form we've had has come at weirdly like a good time, like against maybe in games that either were early enough in Europe where you can make up for it, and against strong opposition in the Premier League where you sort of expected to not do very well, and now you right yourselves a little bit. Like, I really hope a big result on Thursday can start to really galvanize the team, and then we pick up more points in the league, and suddenly you're off to the races.
Yeah, agreed. I think the beauty of it is it's 2 home games now too. So we're a little bit no travel, because we're about to have a lot of it going to Everton and Ajax. We back to back. So get these 2 wins in under our belt, like with Fulham and Ajax, who obviously we've talked about a little bit, but get those 2 wins under the table. I know Fulham are a bit of a better side than the Evertons and Sheffield United we're about to be playing, but they're not exactly flying around the league at like great pace like they were last week, right? Like last year, where they were right up there with us.
They're absolute crap.
They're in that position now where you would probably picture as a Fulham fan for this season, given that they've only been up like a couple of years again, haven't they? Like they've not, you know what I mean? Like they've been bouncing up and down. I think if you're a Fulham fan, you're probably happy with being that lower mid-table fodder team that can put Sheffield United to bed 3-1, like with no problem, and then lose to Man City 5-1. Like I think you're fine with that. If you're a Fulham fan, like that's kind of where we were with Potter in that first year or two. Like I'm quite happy to be dicked by these good teams as long as we're beating the bad ones and we're staying up without worrying about it. I think at this stage, I think if you're Fulham, you're happy with that. But we just need to make sure we're one of those teams that beat them.
Yeah, I think they maybe gave themselves high expectations after last season, though.
It's always the risk, isn't it?
It's hard to replace a guy like Mitrovic. He was pretty much a key part of that team for quite a while, wasn't he?
I mean, we're seeing the same thing with Brentford and Ivan Toney.
Yeah, exactly. But like Fulham's league position, I guess at the moment feels fairly deceptive to me. They picked up 3 points away to Everton at the start of the year, and Everton, are crap, but were crapper even then. They then only picked up 3 points against Luton, a 1-0 home drubbing, and then against Sheffield United, who are like diabolically poor. So they've not really they've been crap, and as you say, they've beaten teams that they need to beat. We should absolutely be getting points off these guys. There's no doubt about it. We absolutely should.
Yeah, absolutely. But they are a bit of a bogey team for us, aren't they? I mean, we all remember last year that was just like that horrible game at the Amex.
Yeah. But I'm not after all this BS that comes out about West Ham, they don't beat Brighton and then they smashed us. I hope for a reverse hoodoo there. I'm not believing in any of that crap anymore.
Agreed. And at the end of the day, they play Monday Night Football too. So while we don't get a very long break in terms of the Thursday to Sunday, at least they are playing as late as physically possible, which will only help a little tiny bit. But
they've scored 8 goals.
Yeah, they're just not great, are they?
They've scored 8. We scored 22.
Yeah, we've also conceded like 18. So
we have, but they've also conceded 13. So it's like I'd rather be where we are, put it that way. But yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, but Sheffield United is the one. I mean, Christ Almighty, they've got 1 point.
Oh, it's got 3-0 over, hasn't it? 3-0 Sheffield United.
We are going to get absolutely wrecked by them. Yeah,
and then we'll beat every team before them and every team all the way up to Chelsea after them. We'll put like 5 past Chelsea and get beat 3-0 by Sheffield United.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that we get beaten by Sheffield United. No doubt.
Yeah.
I don't think I can name a single player on the team. We'll get beaten by them.
Is Sander Berger playing for them?
Good question.
Don't know. Baldock is playing for them because he's Sam Baldock's bro, isn't he? That's the only reason I know he's definitely playing for them. I had him in my fantasy team at the beginning because he was dirt cheap.
Sorry to hear that. It sounds like he's priced correctly. Tom Davies. They signed Tom Davies from Everton. There you go.
Have they?
I guess so.
Blimey. Remember when he was supposed to be the next big thing?
Yeah, he wore his little socks around his ankles. You're like, he could be good. Rubbish.
Oh, Ollie McBurney. Remember when we were in for him?
Sander Berger went to Burnley.
Oh, okay. Was he at Sheffield United before that?
Yeah, he left.
Okay.
For them.
There it is.
Burnley, by the way, I know we're now just talking about around the league, but it's fun. It's fun when you don't have to worry about the relegation zone anymore to talk about the relegation teams. It's weird, isn't it?
It is, though. Yeah, you're right.
Burnley, what a disappointment they've been after what they did in the Championship. I know this has been talked about a lot, but my word, have they been crap based on what the expectations were for them as a team. I mean, what are they? How many points do they have?
4, 3. 4.
They've got 4 points. They're
Because they beat Luton.
minus 16 goal difference. 4 points. So 3 from Luton, and then
Forest.
1 from
Forest love that bottom 3, don't they? Generous lovers.
Yeah, Forest are a weird team as well. I don't know what they're doing. But this is the thing. As it stands right now, the lower part of the league is really bad. Like, I know that can all change, but the lower section of it does feel like there's just a bunch of people beating up on these poor teams at the bottom. I'm just glad we are one of them.
Yeah, from Everton down, because Forest have got, they've got a lot of draws to their name. They're not losing a lot, but they're also just not doing much. So they're not great to play against. But from Everton down, 4 wins between 5 teams, that's it. Collectively,
That's
Everton
mess,
have won, Everton have won twice and scored 9 goals. Luton have won once, Burnley have won once, and Bournemouth and Sheffield United still haven't won a game, at all.
We've scored more goals than the relegation teams combined.
Incredible stat. Incredible. I also love the stat that's continuing into this week as well. Only the relegation teams have conceded more than us as well. Which
we're a glass cannon.
We are.
Created it. We are a glass cannon.
Yeah, we absolutely are. It is. It's mental, really.
This isn't a helpful question. This is not a helpful question. But in an ulterior universe, how good is this side if you've got Moises Caicedo still, and you're playing Caicedo in that defensive midfield position?
I do think about this a little bit, and I think about it with a double whammy, though. I think, what is this team doing with Alexis and Caicedo together?
But I'd be happy with Caicedo and Gilmour, right? I loved Alexis, but I think Gilmour's been astounding in that position. Astounding.
I just think keep them, sign Baleba anyway, right? So we can actually
Yeah.
Don't change any of the signings we've made, but if we just somehow manage to keep
apart from Milner,
yeah, right back anyway. I mean, I don't think we lose to Athens as a first things first. I think we're sat on 4 points in the Europa League, at least. I think. What are the games we've messed up on? I think we still probably get
West Ham.
I think we get stuffed by one of them still, because we did last season. They didn't save us from having a stuffing once or twice.
If you're playing Caicedo instead of Baleba against City, you could argue technically they probably still just score another way, don't they?
I think we probably lose by 6 to Villa. I think maybe it's a 4-1 or even a 4-2, right? I reckon you've got something like that go on. I don't think we lose to West Ham. Probably not. I think that's the one that you see a bit of difference in.
Yeah.
And that's a couple of extra points on the board. And then honestly, I think we probably beat Liverpool too.
Yeah, you could argue. What about, would you get a result against Marseille properly as well? Maybe.
The new manager stuff would have been the only thing that makes me think that we could have been. It may not have been as high scoring. We may have come away with a 1-1 instead of a 2-2, and we don't capitulate like we did. And I think maybe even we score first and they let in. Yeah, it's sad they went, because I think we could do some wild stuff.
This is an unhealthy exercise, but yeah, it
is.
But it's all about that, the fine margins that we have, especially with the injuries, and especially with where we've got those positions where you're just we're so close, because you've got such an amazing picture up top. The potential, but also the current ability of that front grouping is monumental. That front grouping of players should be the envy of most other clubs outside of the top 5-ish in the Premier League. They are Matoma, Fatty, Ferguson, what? Incredible. And then you've got other areas of the pitch completely sewn up. You're just if only we had an extra month in the transfer window to spend some of that money, perhaps. But we'll see.
Yeah, would we have spent it? That's the issue.
No, probably not. One thing I did remember from the game, though, I just want to laugh about just quickly, is that part where Haaland got the ball and started running with it, and Billy Gilmore, for all the amazing work he's done, was trying to tackle him. And it just looked like, sometimes you have those little things where like kids try and bring down a grown adult man, and they're just like trying to take his legs away and batter him, and just nothing happens. It didn't look like a human man versus a human man.
Yeah, it did. For the wrestling fans out there, it felt like Rey Mysterio against like the Big Show. Like
just push.
Just one hand.
You got Heisman for the Yanks. Yeah,
it was, and it happened twice too. That was the funniest part. It's like Gilmore like got angrier and like thought he'd powered up and just bounced further away.
Just bounced. He bounced off.
It was excellent. All right, I think we're about run our course here because we spent the last 10 minutes just talking absolute nonsense. So we will be back next week, obviously, to cover Ajax, to cover Fulham, to cover all of it, really. Really pivotal week in Europa League football for us. Anybody who tries to play it cool is a liar because this one's massive and we need to win it. It really is must win. So we will speak to you post-game one way or another. And we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, you're in a good mood this time next week, discussing 2 wins.
Yeah.
But yeah, have a good week, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, everyone.